can I have these old quilts?
Why don't you take one or two of the others? These old quilts were just made by me and Big D from some old tops your grandmother pieced together before she died.
No, I don't want those. They're all stitched around the borders by machine.
Well, that'll make them last better.
That's not the point. These were made from pieces of Grandma Dee's dresses. Well, she did all this stitching by hand. Imagine.
Some of these pieces here, like the lavender ones, was handed down to her by her mother.
Imagine.
Truth is, I promised to give those quilts to Maggie for when she marries John Thomas.
Maggie can't appreciate these quilts. But she's probably backward enough to put them to everyday use.
Well, I reckon she would. Lord knows I've been saving them long enough without nobody using them. I hope she will.
But they're priceless. Maggie would throw them on a bed, and in 5 years they'd be rags. Less than that.
She can make some more. Maggie knows how to quilt.
You don't understand. The point is, these quilts. These quilts!
Well, what would you do with them?
Hang them.
Everyday Use is a short story by author Alice Walker. It follows a mother and her 2 daughters, Dee, a more confident and opinionated person, who has changed her name to Wangiro to better embrace her heritage, and Maggie, a shy, quiet person, chin to chest, eyes on ground, feet in shuffle, ever since the fire that burned the other house to the ground. The story centers on a dinner between these 3 and Dee's husband, where Dee begins taking things from the house and eventually asks, or more so demands, to take 2 quilts, even though those quilts have been promised to Maggie. The quilts are old, hand-sewn, made up of pieces from their grandmother's skirts. Dee is insistent that Maggie shouldn't have them, as she will put them to everyday use, where they will eventually rip and become rags, while Dee will hang them up, preserve them, and, in a greater sense, preserve the heritage that comes with them. The scene we saw at the beginning shows the disdain that Dee has for the idea of putting these quilts to use, and the superiority she feels for how she will use them, which is by not using them at all. The story ends with the mother giving the quilts to Maggie, and Dee lamenting that her mother does not understand or appreciate her heritage.
You just don't understand.
Understand what?
Your heritage. And Maggie, you ought to do something with yourself, too. It's a new day for us. But from the way you and Mama still live, you'd never know it.
Everyday Use is a discussion of heritage, how one appreciates it, and how we preserve the past. Alice Walker is depicting 2 people who, while they share the same ancestry, have very different and conflicting ideas about how that ancestry should be honored. Dee believes that the artifacts hold too much artistic value to be used normally, while the mother and Maggie believe that using them represents being close to their loved ones. The quilts have familial value, which is honored through their use. Even if the quilt ends up in rags, as Dee is afraid it will, Maggie can make another, which she was taught to do by her family and which, in her and her mother's minds, is preserving her past. It is a difference between living the past, making new quilts and using the items for their intended function, and holding onto them as symbols rather than objects with a purpose. Similar to Everyday Use, Nine Souls, a game by Red Candle Games, focuses on the past and the present's relationship with it. As you go through the game, many of the souls, or the rulers of New Kunlun, that you meet are fixated on the idea of going back to the past, making up or punishing themselves for past mistakes. or holding on to the traditions and vices of the past, even if they cannot coexist with the state that the station is in. Yi listens to messages from his sister Hang throughout the game, regretting how he left things with her, but knowing that he is past the point of making it right.
quân杯蝼蚁。
阮猜又来了。我做。是，阮都不行。我做因西咧，我咧救阮。手无势，阮都不行。
The past becomes a constant sticking point for our characters, and its influence is seen in the entirety of Nu Kunlun, whether through the characters or through the collectibles that you find throughout the game. Remnants of the Solarians' past and heritage that they have had to leave behind when they fled their homeworld. While making his way through the warehouse zone, Yi has multiple conversations with Yan Lao, who runs this district. When the Solarians fled to Nu Kunlun, Yan Lao took along many treasures and artifacts, storing them in the warehouse. Yi angrily berates him for this, saying that this space could have been used to save more Solarians, and these artifacts are useless and simply symbols of the rich and powerful. Yan Lao, in turn, defends the object's place, arguing that it is necessary to preserve the past, even at the expense of Solarian lives. That the past, even sitting in a warehouse and not being used, has worth as symbols of their people's history. He tells Yi a story of his father, who, after showing Yan Lao a record, tripped and used his body as a shield to protect the record from breaking. His father was willing to sacrifice his life if it meant keeping the record undamaged. Yan Lao, at first, did not understand this mindset, but eventually agreed with his father's reverence of these objects, and secured his place on Nu Kunlun by taking these objects aboard and being their caretaker. After the battle with Yan Lao and his death, Yi can enter the vault that houses these artifacts. At the end of the room is a record, and the description says that real collectors would never play their collections. If you take this record back to the Four Seasons Pavilion, it will be set up in your house, and you can play it any time you want, symbolizing stepping away from the notion of heritage as a display or as a symbol, instead living the heritage by using the item for its intended purpose. Similar to the record, as the game goes on, Yi brings back many objects to Xuan Xuan, a young human who he takes in. Games, instruments, books, and art supplies all go to expanding Xuan Xuan's impressive collection of Solarian artifacts. Xuan Xuan is excited to receive these items and even more excited to learn how to use them. You get several scenes between Xuan Xuan and Kuafu, one of the souls and an old friend of Yi's, where Kuafu laments that these objects, rare and valuable, would be used with so little skill. These objects weren't being used, would probably collect dust and become unusable eventually, but there is this lingering idea that the object is only worth being used with great skill, even if the alternative is not being used at all. Xuan Xuan makes ugly pots with expensive clay, draws crude pictures with ancient art supplies, makes food with ingredients that can't even be grown or made anymore. He may not have the talent of the past masters, but it is these works that make the Four Seasons Pavilion a home. Kuafu eventually admits that, even with Xuan Xuan's lack of skill, the objects bring joy, and while their value might not be in their superior craftsmanship or gorgeous art, they have value because they were made with love. This is seen in how he displays the pot that Xuan made him prominently in his section of the pavilion, even after getting upset that Xuan was using the clay. The objects that Xuan used did not lose value when he used them. If anything, they gained value because they created a home. This could be seen as a commentary on what a collector is and how we assign value to objects. Collectors don't play their records because the record does not have value to them as a piece of music. It has value as a status symbol. The objects that Yan Lao brought are sitting in a warehouse that could have become more seats for more of his people, because they hold value as a symbol of his worth and purpose in New Kunlun. Similar to Dee's argument in everyday use, Yan Lao is arguing for preservation even if it means that, eventually, their real purpose and function will be lost. The clay will eventually get hard and dry and unusable. But is that better than it being gone because it was used, and used unskillfully for that matter? The blanket will be hung, possibly framed, and it will still eventually fray and lose its color and gather dust. But is it better that that happens slowly as opposed to being used and destroyed in only a few years? Yi and Xuan feel more value in the use of these items than in keeping them for no other reason than preservation. Yi because of his mission to move him and his people away from the past and put an end to all this, and Xuan because he wants to learn about and better appreciate Yi's culture by actively doing the crafts and practices of it. Like Maggie, Xuan honors his best friend's culture by learning how to make pots, how to cook their food, how to paint in their style. He is preserving their heritage by using these objects, like how Maggie can preserve her family's heritage by making new blankets in the way she was taught. The blanket can never again be made from her grandmother's dresses. The material will eventually be lost, but she can still make blankets in the way her grandmother did, blankets that will be put to everyday use.
D. Wanjero. How can... Take one or two of the others.